Man, I remember the first time I did Tren. It was like 30 cc bottles. Anyways, I did 3 cc's a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I never had particularly strong triceps, so I was probably doing 95-pound skull crushers before. And then in about 4 weeks, I was doing 225-pound skull crushers. I went from 95 pounds to it was crazy, man. I was like, this is insane. Yeah, like this is what real steroids is. This is crazy. And you hear these guys using 1,000 milligrams. I'm like, your shit is garbage for sure. Or whatever. I mean, maybe I was just a hyper responder, but I was strong as shit.
How did you feel mentally though? Like only Tren, your HPTA shut down, your testosterone and estrogen is 0. Like how did you feel after 10 weeks?
Garbage, but I didn't know why, right? And so this is like the stupidity that kids do. I had no idea.
Welcome to Vigorous Podcast. Today I'm joined by IFBB Pro, Ben Pakulski. Ben, it's been a while since you've been on the circuit, but you've had a very long-lasting IFBB Pro career. And I think you retired in 2016. Was that officially? Or did you kind of slowly step back? Okay, so what happened there?
I slowly started stepping back in 2012, if I'm being honest. But 2016 was sort of the end. What happened there? Yeah, you kind of threw that question out. I just didn't need it anymore, Steve. So I had children in 2012 and 2013. And it really just changed my values. You know, I was like, I was a very selfish bodybuilder, like, very introverted, very focused, almost ruthless. And it's all I wanted to do. I just, I would, it's sort of cliche, but, eat, sleep, and train is really all I wanted to do because I just wanted to be the best. And then my son was born in 2012 and then my daughter was born in 2013. And I always say, God had different plans for me. My grandfather was like my dad growing up. And when he passed away, him and I talked about what I was doing on my deathbed. He didn't like it. He was always sort of against it because he didn't think it was healthy. And I really believe that he sent my children to save my life because there was nothing else that would have stopped me. It was, it sounds sort of, unusual or silly, but there's nothing that would have stopped me except for children. And to send both in 18 months, I was like, yeah, I just can't keep doing this. So my daughter was born in 2013. I was, second place in the Arnold Classic 2013. And I definitely could have kept going, but I just didn't have the same drive. I didn't have the same purpose. I just didn't want to be in the gym 5 hours a day when I could be at home with my children, my family.
I remember seeing one of your videos back in the day that you would like live away from home, from your family for like a couple of weeks or a couple of months leading into contest. Yeah, leading into the Mr.
Olympia in 2012. I went to Vegas, California, Venice. So right before meeting my wife, I was living in Venice, and I was living on the beach. And I was living the Arnold Schwarzenegger life. Right, I would wake up in the morning, I'd meditate on the beach, I'd go to the gym, and I really just walked everywhere. I didn't really do anything else. And so for 3 weeks before the Olympia in 2012, which is my son was only 9 or 10 months old, I was like, do you mind if I go and do this? Because I really just want to dial my brain in. Because it's really hard. Your son's at home. He's waking up all the time. And so it was very selfish of me. And I missed him so much. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like everything I do it for him and my daughter. And I just didn't want to do it anymore, man. So like, I kind of stepped away 2013 through 15, 16. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to retire feeling like I still have something left in me. So as you said, I kind of changed my physique in 2016. Competed 5 times in 2016, won in a pro show, did the Olympia again. You do the Olympia once, everyone's like, I was kind of a fluke. I was like, I got to do it at least twice, just for my own sort of self gratification.
Right. Yeah, because it was a year where you stepped back for a bit. Was that 2015 to 2016? I had to go through your contest pictures to kind of see. Because at one point you got like super gigantic, but you also had a little bit of a distension going, and then you disappeared for a while, and then you came back with a vacuum. Which is now when we're looking at the stage now, like everybody in the top 10 basically can pull a vacuum, but you were one of the first quote unquote mass monsters to actually do that and come back from a period where you had some serious distension going on back in the day.
I think
so that's a big change.
Serious distension. So I think for me, Steve, when they stopped including posing in the judging, I just stopped doing it. And I think as a bodybuilder, posing needs to be such a part of your routine because it allows you to pay attention. And so I started hating my physique in 2014 and 15 because, I have kids at home. I go to the gym, I train, I follow my diet. I didn't really pose. I didn't really go and do the extra ab work. I didn't really do all the additional stuff. So I stopped paying attention to it. And then I started hating my physique and I was like, I don't like the way I look. So I committed to myself to do everything it took to bring a physique that I actually loved and appreciated to the stage of 2016. which really, everyone's like, what did you do? And the answer is, one, I learned how to breathe, right? I created a breathwork practice. Two, I just paid a lot of attention to it. I have an obsessive personality, and I just paid a lot of attention to it. I was like, I'm going to bring a waist that is impressive, and it just takes paying attention. Anyone can do it. All these guys who have big blown up distended waists, sort of everything in the past now, but even some guys now, I'm like, you can change your waist. You can totally do it. It's not hard. It just takes attention.
So what did you change then from in the past besides the breathing techniques and more frequent posing? Was it a dietary change or a drug change? Like we heard about the palumboism and the GH gut and all those things. And
I don't think it was any of that stuff. Like, I don't think it was GH or steroid abuse. For me, I got to 325 pounds, and when I was 325, I didn't look bad. I mean, it wasn't like, where my gut became distended, Steve, is because I have every obesity gene on the planet. Like, I can eat all day. I'm never satiated. I can just eat all day long.
Same here.
For me to be 320 pounds was easy. I could have easily been 350, 360. My waist would have been massive. I don't ever get satiated. The so-called buffet gene. I go to the buffet, I just keep eating, man. So as a bodybuilder, that's a great thing because you can grow. But when it comes down to like not paying attention to your diet, I just would blow it out in the off season. Right. So in the year that I came back, I was like, I'm just going to control my portions. I also had the discipline to control my portions when I needed to. So I just dropped my calories down a little bit, never got so sort of big and distended in the off season. And I never really was a big growth hormone guy to begin with. I never really used more than 6 IUs, which, for an average person is high, but for a bodybuilder is very low.
I use more right now.
Yeah.
And I know guys who used way more. It's
I remember Dexter saying he was using 18 IUs a day, and I was like,
I talked to several of them, and it's some guys can just handle more, and their waist doesn't grow either. And then other guys on 4 IUs, 6 IUs, their waist grows. And is that the IGF response, or is that buildup of visceral fat from the inter-workout nutrition? Right? It's hard to pinpoint because a lot of these guys, they don't really do organ imaging or fibro scans or that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if you did that back in the day, where you kind of kept track of your organ health. Seems to be a little bit more popular nowadays. I did blood work.
I didn't do any visceral imaging. I obviously did DEXA scans to see what my visceral fat was like. And so that was my goal in 2016, to make sure I had no visceral fat left. And I think I did a pretty good job. So,
yeah, I mean, when you stepped on stage, you pulled that vacuum. I mean, you were slightly downsized. And I'm not sure if that's like a loading protocol thing, or that you simply just reduced the food portions in the off season. And started at a little bit lighter body weight. Like there's so much that goes into it. You see it with a lot of pros that kind of downsize for a while to bring the waist back in, that they can't achieve that crazy fullness anymore. Yeah. And I think also part of that is like the crazy loading protocols that they did in the 90s and 2000s, just 3, 4, 5 days of carb loading, insulin, anadrol, and then you're a little bit backed up by the time you hit the stage.
I was just, I definitely didn't aggressively load, we'll say that, because, I did all my preps from after 2012 and 2012, I did with Chad Nichols. Yeah. And the rest of them I did by myself. And I think, when you're standing there by yourself, looking in the mirror, you're like, I don't fucking know, man. Am I full? Am I flat? Am I fat? I'm like, I don't know. So I just kind of took a mathematical approach, and I was like, I'm just going to go a little bit above, sort of my total daily expenditure for 4 or 5 days in a row, and just slowly fill out instead of doing anything extreme. When you have somebody there who can keep her eye on you, you trust, then it's a little bit different. You can be a little more aggressive. But for me, I just wanted a little bit of peace of mind to know my waist was going to be tight. And I wanted to bring a different sort of aesthetic package rather than just being the big blown out beast.
Yeah. But which look did you like more? The big blown out beast, super, Pakulski, or like a little bit more streamlined where you could actually pull a vacuum? Because I think you were one of the first to actually pull that off.
Yeah.
So my favorite look
for me was 2012, I think, was, as I was just sort of breaking onto the scene. That was my favorite look at the Arnold, the Olympia 2012. And that was, I could have done a vacuum. I just didn't even think about it because it wasn't something I ever thought. Because I never thought my waist up to that point had never been blown out.
Right.
My waist had always been pretty consistent. And then after 2014, I just stopped paying attention to it. So my waist got bigger. And so I really liked the fact that I could pull a vacuum. I thought it was impressive because my waist was the same size as my legs on stage. So that's pretty cool. That was really cool.
Yeah. So it's nothing. There's nothing to do with changing your drug protocol, because people always speculate, right? Like as an observer observer of IFBB Pro Bodybuilding, you never really know what's going on because you have the magazines, and those were a little bit half-truths, and sometimes the pros are a little bit, reluctant to talk about performance-enhancing drugs, especially back in the day. So we're here wondering, what did he do? But if it's mostly posing and changing your meals
my
around,
drug protocol, brother, was the exact same from 2009 all the way to 2016. It was always the same. I literally did the same stack because I was like, what's predictable? I know what it is. I had this like protocol where at 12 weeks I would do this, and 9 weeks I would do this, and 6 weeks I would do this, and I would kind of make adjustments, and it was always the same. Provided I could access the ingredients or the molecules I wanted to access, I did the same thing all the time. There are certainly years where you could access better quality stuff. I don't know if you faced that in Thailand, but as a pro, that was one of the challenges. One of the things I hated about professional bodybuilding was it was often a contest of who had the better drug dealer, which sucked. Like who's getting the best pharmaceutical products. Like if I can't get the things I need, I'm not going to look the way I want to look. And that's shitty, man. Like I would rather compete with these guys on work ethic and discipline and commitment rather than like who's got the best, pharmaceutical enhancements. And unfortunately, that's just the way it was.
The weird thing is it still happens to this day where some of the IFBB pros, they after, they're 12 weeks into their diet and they don't look like they're supposed to look. And then they go test their gear and it's 50% underdosed. From a reliable source. Now, having a YouTube channel talking about drugs predominantly, people find me, so I can basically get anything I need, even Increlex, pharmaceutical GH, pharmaceutical steroids. It's all available here, luckily. So I don't have to handicap myself to just underground labs only. There's even now decent underground labs after 15 years of absolute junk, using ethyl oleate and propylene glycol and all these synthetic carrier oils that you don't really want to use. So now we finally got some high quality UGLs, but even then I would rather stick with pharmaceutical.
I bet we have some good stories we could exchange on the length that I went to get good pharmaceutical substance.
Hey, if you want to spill the beans, spill it here, because this is what this podcast is all about.
Here's a good funny story that don't make this a YouTube video. I met a Romanian stripper and I was hanging out with her for a while, and she had her brother was still in Romania, and I knew Romania was the only place that made Cytadren legally. So she sent me Cytadren. I had like an endless supply of Cytadren, and I remember giving it. I won't tell the names, but I remember giving to some of the top guys because I was just coming up, and I was like, oh yeah, I give it to this guy, I give it to this guy, and you watch their physique change over the weeks, and you're like, that was.
It's no longer available though, Cytadren. It was very popular for a while.
Yeah.
But it was hard to predict, though, from what I understand.
What is it?
The Cytadren, the effects of the aromatase inhibiting effects and the diuretic effects were pretty hard to.
Pretty remarkable, man. So, I remember, I didn't know anything about it. I just remember one guy, I'm not going to say his name, talking about it and be like, oh man, if you can get this. I was like, yeah, I'm sure I can get it. So I got it. And then I sent it to him, and you just watched, he went and did some crazy things in the sport, and you watch what happens to his physique in a really small amount of time. It was pretty. There was 2 or 3 guys that I kind of supplied with it, and we would trade for things. And because you could get in the US, you could get pharmaceutical halotestin, and there wasn't a lot of guys that can get that. So I would trade the Cytadren for halotestin because if you ever use real halotestin, there's nothing like it in the world. It's kind of crazy. I always say to my wife, I would start 3 weeks out, and I'd say, sweetheart, I love you, but just don't talk to me for 3 weeks. And that was one of the reasons I'd also go to Venice, because you get so, like, I always say I can understand sort of women around their period. Your hormones are so crazy that like I would rather smash somebody's head off the wall than like eat or train. Like the anger was just unbelievable. So I just stayed to myself, didn't talk to anybody, and that drug definitely shouldn't be legal except for very extreme circumstances.
No, it's a very rough drug. But the good thing about halotestin is that it kind of picks you out of this dieting phase where you're really depleted and super tired. So instead of relying on the Adderall, ephedrine, injectable ephedrine, very popular here in certain parts in Asia. So it's very popular as kind of a pick-me-up to kind of get you out of the dieting phase. And then, up until a couple of years back, I would recommend halotestin because, again, you get stronger again, you have this positive aggression, it brings your physique back. But I think nowadays it's not really necessary because we use a lot of mitochondrial support aids, and you see that a lot of guys, they don't really have this dieting brain anymore. They're happy up until the show. Your
protocol. I'd love to hear or see your protocol for mitochondrial optimization. I know I was on your page a couple of days ago checking it out, and you got some cool stuff. But I'd love to. I'm sure you shared it on the show, but is there specific things that you love to use?
So there's Mod C, which is now included in the WADA prohibit list of 2025. So now we know that it's actually working.
Giving 5 milligrams a day. What dose are you doing?
No, so 5 milligrams you would do previously twice per week, Monday, Friday, intramuscularly, because subcutaneous would lead to some sort of allergic reaction. But now, because I always thought with Mod C that you need to reconstitute and inject, because the peptide is quite fragile.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, and then I got a 10 milligram vial for one of my affiliates. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do 10 milligrams. I know I'll get anaphylactic shock. It's too potent for that stuff. So I just did 1 milligram on workout days, and it works just the same. So I used that vial for 2 weeks, and I didn't lose any potency or didn't get any diminishing returns at the end of the last injection after 2 weeks of reconstitution. So now I do 1 milligram on workout days 5 times a week. And then every day I take SLU-PP332. That's a new...
very familiar.
So it's a compound that increases mitochondrial biogenesis in combination with Mod C providing all of the nutrients for the mitochondria. And then methylene blue. That's became a little bit more popular during the pandemic. And I really started researching that. So that helps with mitochondrial health, but it also improves your moods because it prevents serotonin breakdown. It has so many benefits. The problem is that it turns everything blue, so it's better to get the tablets than the liquid.
A little bit of an appetite suppressant too, no? Methylene?
I never really noticed that because my appetite is always ravaging, like yours. So I would need retatrutide, tirzepatide, semaglutide to really bring that down. And even then I can still eat, but it just takes my mind off eating. So this little simple stack of methylene blue, Mod C, and SLU-PP332, a lot of guys were running that into the Mr. Olympia because they told me at the gala dinner where I met you, like, Steve, this stack is amazing. And we're all happy-go-lucky running around.
Are you able to measure your mitochondrial sort of levels or biogenesis, like any measurement factors?
I think what I'll do is I'll link 2 websites that I recently got from one of my subscribers. They sent it to me. Let me see if I have it bookmarked here. So there's one website. Yeah, it's called MitoSwap and Me Screen. And I think it's just a swap like you would do a DNA test like 23andMe, even though 23andMe is probably better not to do anymore because half of the staff left for undisclosed reasons. So MitoSwap and Me Screen, I'll link them down below, guys. Those are places where you can test for your mitochondrial health. But I haven't done that myself yet because I live in Thailand and then getting those kits here takes forever.
I can get them to you, man. The company I'm affiliated with now is FitnessGenes. Are you familiar with FitnessGenes?
No, I don't know.
Really good company, man. And it's all focused around like muscle building, nutrition, supplementation, specific to fitness. So it's, they do a little lifestyle questionnaire coming in, and they actually give you very specific high leverage interventions. Because obviously there's a million things you could do, but they're like, hey, based on your lifestyle and your genetics, here's the most high leverage things you can do. And oftentimes it's like, it's never single SNPs that you're looking at, right? It's always the interaction between multiple SNPs. And the thing I love about this company is these are the Oxford geneticists, right? So from Oxford in the UK, and they're just brilliant. So they give me a lot of really useful, actionable stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So have you been looking into mitochondrial health as of recent and kind of see how you can optimize that? Like, we're getting older now, so
man. Like my thing now is like, what does it look like to optimize for performance and optimize for longevity? And sometimes those things can be kind of at odds with each other, but I think in some ways they're parallel, right? If I can optimize for mitochondrial function, energy production, brain health, hormone optimization, organ optimization, then longevity should be a byproduct of that. And so performance doesn't necessarily mean bodybuilding type performance where I want to be as big as possible or anything that's extreme, but I want to optimize for, sort of organ optimization and hormone optimization, which I believe will move you in the direction of longevity.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially as you get older, it starts to become more and more important. Like the bodybuilding thing, I think it's either for the genetic elite or for the young bucks that can get away with the hormone abuse and the food abuse and the training abuse up until a certain point. And then after all, you kind of have to step back, or you do it intermittently where you kind of take a break and then come back when the bug really bites you. But doing it super consistently, like when you're in your 30s, it's almost impossible when you're 40, Plus you have actual responsibilities like kids and business and, seminars, traveling at 250 plus pounds. It's a nightmare.
Man, I was 320 and I felt great. Everyone's like, how do you feel? Like, dude, I could fucking run. I could run. I could do cardio. I was 320. I have a really big bone structure. So right now, not having competed in 8 years, I'm still 250, 240, 250.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm still big. Not that I want to be big, man, but my bone structure is very big. My legs are still big. So like, man, bodybuilding was something that like, I don't think I put on muscle easily, maybe, but like I got big easily, which means fat, muscle, like all of it.
Yeah.
And like, so I think, bodybuilding for me was something that, I was almost made for. Like I eat too much. I love to train hard. I just like did everything to the extreme. I don't think I did the drugs to the extreme, and I'm happy to share my stacks. But bodybuilding was something that I was super insecure as a kid. Right, I come from a family of overweight alcoholics and a lot of drug addicts and drug use. And yeah. So,
sounds like my story.
There you go. Yeah. So like, I was afraid, man. I had a stutter until I was 18 years old because I was, my dad was pretty aggressive, pretty violent temper. And so I would shake. Like I would stand in front of adults and I would shake. So I thought I had a stutter, but I was actually afraid. So bodybuilding was the thing that sort of allowed me to put on this external armor. I put on this armor and I became this really confident person, like, outwardly and inwardly, because I was overcoming those insecurities and those inadequacies. And bodybuilding was probably the only thing I could have done. Cause like you think of like the amount that I unconsciously want to eat, like I would have been fat as shit, or, probably some type of drug user or alcohol user. Cause like,
overcoming diabetes by this point, Yeah. Did you, back in the day when you started training, did you train with that perpetual rage from issues in your childhood where you don't really think about
perpetual insecurity? Okay. So like I had to be better than everyone else. So like if there was anyone around who was training harder than me, I would just fucking kill them. I would be like, let's go. Like I'll go right now. I want to go till it's just, I wanted to be not insecure anymore. I wanted to know I wasn't lesser than everybody else. Right. So it looks egocentric from the outside, but it was just this pure insecurity drive. And I just didn't want to be lesser than anyone.
So is that one of the reasons why you moved to Venice, to be surrounded by all the hardcore bodybuilders, or was that
I think by that point I was over it,
part of the scene?
I think by the time I moved to Venice, I was sort of past that. Like, I think really early in my career, I realized that I didn't have to compete against anyone else except for myself. And so by the time I was probably 22, 23, I went to university, got a university degree, and I realized like, man, I'm going to be the biggest guy, the strongest guy, no matter where I go. I don't have to compete against anybody anymore. I was always very strong. I was, very big. So I kind of lost the desire to, from the time I was 16 to 21, I just wanted to kill everybody in the gym. And then after 21, I was like, oh man, I'm probably secure enough in myself where I don't have to do this anymore. And I moved to Venice when I was 25, 26. At that point, it was like, I just want to be around the best in the world because I want to know what the standard is, right? Like, kind of rewinding a little bit, 1998, I went to Mr. Olympia in New York City. Ronnie won his first year. I decided in that moment, this is what I want to do. And that became my standard, right? I was comparing myself against Ronnie Coleman and Flex Wheeler and Dorian Yates. I'm like, until I look like that, I'm nothing. And so when I was 25, 26, I just got my pro card. I'm like, all right, I'm going to move to Venice because I wanted to train and compete with the best so that I knew I was doing what it took. And the truth is, when I got to Venice, like there was really not really anyone there who was training at the level that I was. So I sort of took the lead as, obviously Michael Hearn was there. Michael Hearn's incredible. And, but other than that, like, Dex was there for a long time. But obviously we have very different physiques and very different approaches to bodybuilding. So there was not really anyone there who wanted to go at that level.
How was it back in the day when you moved there? Like you're a young 26-year-old guy and looking for contracts, looking for sponsors. How did you get that set up coming from Canada to the US? Because I mean, it's still reasonably young in age-wise, but of course, physique-wise, you're well ahead than so many other people because you got a pro card. So how does that transition go? Because I see a lot of guys, they move to the US at one point, and then their career really takes off.
So I've timed it so that as soon as I got down there, I was in contest prep for the Flex Pro in 2011. I knew the Flex Pro was owned by Weider, obviously Flex Magazine. Coming in there, I actually had the contract with Muscular Development Magazine. So I got that because I competed in the North American Championships and nobody knew who I was. And I walked on and everyone's like, dude, this is your show. Nobody's going to beat you. So, people started like creating this buzz around me. And then I moved to California shortly thereafter. And I timed it to do the Flex Pro because I wanted to go to California and not be in the off season. I want to be like, I want to take my shirt off at the beach. I want to be the guy who's kind of like, I want to be the guy. So I went to the Flex Pro that year and I got fourth, which wasn't awesome. But still got me some attention, got me I shifted over from Muscular Development to Flex magazine back when there was magazine contracts. And it wasn't paying much. I think I was making $3-4 grand a month from the magazine or something like that. But it got me the cover of the magazine. It got me a supplement sponsorship with at the time a Canadian company. So I was making, I think you asked I was, I don't know, maybe 10-12 grand a month. Kind of as soon as I got down there, which was decent. And as you said, we didn't have any social media. We had enough we had to be in California to get the magazines, to get the video shoots, all that type of stuff. Like this is kind of before the internet was still a thing, but it wasn't certainly what it is now.
No, I know. And of course, now with social media, you can kind of create your own empire. I know that you adopted a lot of the landing pages for Muscle Intelligence University and all that kind of stuff. I think you were one of the first who opened up a membership site. Maybe John Meadows had his Mountain Dog website already online. And now everybody has a membership website.
Before John. Yeah. I was a little before John. I started in 2011. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a long time ago. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You really adopted this internet marketing stuff. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. So in 2007, I had my first supplement contract. No, it would have been 2009. My first real big supplement contract. It was, I was making 100 grand a year or something. And I had the contract for 3 months. The company calls me one morning, I think it was a Tuesday morning. And they're like, hey man, you're done. We can't pay your contract anymore. We're not making any money. So you go from making 100 grand to making zero, like this. Yeah. And it was always in the back of my mind. So in 2011, my wife said, hey, our girlfriend at the time, then wife, said, hey, I'm pregnant. And I was like, okay. I can't rely on these supplement contracts anymore, because at any moment, you're only as good as your last contest or your last photo, or you do something wrong, you're sort of at their disposal. So I was like, all right, I'm going to create a business. And it just so happened that at the time I was training this guy, and I trained him for the World Championships to win his he won the World Championships in his federation. And he goes, hey man,
is it IFBB Elite or WBPF?
WBFF.
Yeah. So I coached a lot of people there also.
Yeah. So he said, hey man, the way your approach to this is different than anyone I've ever worked with. Would you be interested in teaching this to people? And I was like, yes. So he literally took me under his wing, taught me how to sort of create an online business. We partnered for the first business. That's where MI40 came from. MI40 was just a program in 2011 that was partnered with this other guy. And so he taught me a bunch of stuff, and the program took off. And I did no marketing. It was all word of mouth. And we sold hundreds of thousands of those programs. And, people all around the world know MI40 as this incredible sort of life-changing program, because I just took an intelligent approach to bodybuilding rather than just mindlessly slinging weight from point A to point B. The thing that changed my physique most was when I learned to actually do things well based on my body, right? My body's different than yours, and you got to select exercises right and execute them correctly. And that's sort of this step that has to precede hard work, I think, right? Some guys can build muscle with hard work if you have great genetics, but if you don't, you got to learn how to sort of optimize your exercise selection and your exercise execution. So that's how that was all built.
Okay. And then, so that took off right from the start with little marketing, or did you advertise in some of the online magazines like Muscular Development, Flex Online?
Man. It was all word of mouth. Right. And so I kind of did it on purpose. So my idea was, I don't want to market to the average gym bro. I want to market to the smartest guy in every room, right? So, you're the smartest guy in your community. People come to Steve to learn how to train, to learn how to supplement, to learn how to whatever. And there's one person in every little community. So I was literally speaking to those guys, and I was like, hey, this is how you do this, and this is how you make this most effective. And then what seemed to happen is they would go and tell their community, and every professional bodybuilder in the world would say, hey, you got to go watch Ben. He's the best. He's the smartest. And that's sort of how that grew, man. It's I wouldn't talk to the lowest common denominator. I would sort of talk to the highest common denominator, and everyone just loved it. And that's how it grew organic. I was very blessed, sort of planned it that way, but it was obviously very early in the internet, so the competition was low.
And there's not enough of that in our fitness community, because a lot of these guys, especially the influencers, they cater to the lowest common denominators, the guys that just stepped into the gym yesterday, and then tomorrow they want their SARM cycle. That's a story for a different video. So there's a lot of these entry-level programs and entry-level cycles and entry-level supplementation. And it's also something I never wanted for this YouTube channel. I wanted to cater to the top 10% who already did 10 years of hardcore lifting and already thought about taking performance enhancing drugs and just wanted to take it to the next level and then see what kind of, things they needed to pay attention to regarding the drug interactions and the organ imaging and the health parameters and really optimizing every nuance. And that means you have a smaller audience, but the audience is a lot more intelligent and they're the people at the top of the game. So that's why I always like to go to the gala dinner at Mr. Olympia, because then I kind of see my audience, what they've been taking away from a YouTube channel, and I literally see it on stage, the difference that it makes. So that's always good to see, even though I can't always get credit for it because he's, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I got a delay. So one of the things that I didn't do is I wanted to treat everyone like a natural athlete, because I really, and you'll get this, like how many guys have you trained that are natural? And my observation is those guys are way more committed, man. Those guys, the diet 100%. Is perfect, the cardio is perfect, the training is perfect. I was like, start there. Everyone should start with that. And then if you decide later that you want to do some molecules to improve your mitochondria or your hormone, great. But if you start with the basics and you do the basics really well, your level of success will be exponentially higher. It's just like business. It's just like everything, man. Do the foundational stuff well. So my program really focused on, well, what are those foundational things? And how do we do those well? And what are the things that set, because one of my best friends is, a couple of my best friends actually are like the top natural bodybuilders in the world. And I learned a lot of things from them. And I was like, man, the discipline that they need and the detail that they pay attention to their diet is very different than the pro bodybuilders most. And so most pro bodybuilders, I'll tell you a story. I was in Hungary with 3 of the top guys. I won't say who they are, but we were traveling with one of our sponsors, and we're a few weeks out from the Arnold Classic. And these guys are eating steak and French fries, complaining about the fact that they're on a diet. And I was like, bro, I haven't touched French fries in 5 years as a pro bodybuilder. These guys are complaining they're eating steak and French fries 3 times a day. And just because it's like, oh, we'll take a little more of this, we'll take a little more of that. And so the culture becomes a drug-based culture instead of a training and a discipline-based culture. And I never wanted to advocate that,
Yeah. So that's what I noticed, like on my YouTube channel. Of course, it attracts a lot of people that want to know about the pharmacology, but a lot of them forget the basics. Like I was a drug-free athlete. Yeah, I was drug-free for 11 years. I trained drug-free from 15 to 26. And then I decided to take something when I felt that I accomplished everything I could as a natural. Now, did I look phenomenal? No. I'll be the first one to say it, but I had a full-time job. I was a business consultant working 40 to 80 hours per week. So how committed can you be? And I even brought all my meals to all the meetings and all that stuff. So I was as committed as could be with a full-time job. Now, with the information we have nowadays, I think I could have gained another 5 kilos of muscle and looked a little bit leaner. But that's in hindsight, right? We're talking about 2008. So how much natural information was there available? Same as performance enhancing drug information.
You just need sort of that. You need that one person or that one community that you trust, And I think as a young 15 to 26-year-old person, for me, I was always looking. I was like, well, Charles Poliquin is great for this, and Milish is great for that, and Charles Glass is great for that. And I didn't really have sort of that one person or that one community that I really trusted to like, this person's got my best interests at heart. They're going to teach me how to do this well. They're going to keep me healthy. Man, I always was worried that I was going to hurt myself, like not in training, but like with steroids or with molecules. Right. So I was always a skeptic, man. I was like, I'm not doing anything until I know I have someone that I can trust, which took a very long time. Like I really was always super skeptical, man. And now, so I think that's why I sort of became who I am in the industry to a lot of people, is like, I have their best interests at heart. And like, I'm never going to tell somebody something that's going to hurt them or it's going to be dangerous. Right. I'd always try to play on the side of caution, because like, man, that's what I would have liked. I want someone who's going to make sure my diet is on point, make sure my training is on point, make sure my mindset is on point. And then if you want to go ahead and do some molecules on top of that, let's do it in the safest way possible, right? Take care of your shit.
Yeah. It's very hard to get through to people though. Like I can occasionally I make videos about the lifestyle, right? Cooking your own meals, how to train, how to supplement, and it gets no views because people really don't.
But the right people are watching, I think,
Of course. Yeah. It makes a difference because I meet them at the expos. But I think nowadays people are just relying on pharmacology. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I was way more dedicated when I was natural compared to now, because now I know if I slip up somewhere, I'm like, you know what, I can compensate with this. And since I'm basically, I typecast myself into a professional drug user here on YouTube by only talking about pharmacology because that's what the audience wants to see. I literally have a solution for everything. And that might come at my own detriment. But that's why I do blood work every month.
Steve, I think it's great. Like someone like yourself is really great because the world needs someone who's willing to experiment, who's willing to think about all the pharmacological pathways, and that's really great, man. And I think the message that needs to be perpetuated, even though it isn't sexy, is like do the fucking basics, man. Don't be lazy. Do shit what you need to do. And that's the masculine conversation, right? That's sort of this drive that I've got behind now is like becoming a man is taking personal responsibility for everything in your life. And I'm not saying don't use drugs as a man, just like, but be willing to be disciplined in the shit you need to be disciplined in. You know, I always say to the young kids, I'm like, a boy will change his mind and you know, it doesn't want to be challenged. And, you know, that's a boy. A boy's like, he's going to avoid the challenging stuff. But a man's going to say like, I'm taking personal responsibility. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be disciplined. And if I decide to do some stuff on top of that, that's great. But, you know, the culture that's being perpetuated, like you're saying, is like, just take the easy path, man. Just take the easy path. And like, I think both of them have value.
Yeah, so that's mostly the influencer route, right? The TikTok influencer route, and I try to stay away from that as far as possible as I can. Yeah. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. Like at one point in time, you decided to take the plunge and get on the steroid train. Like back then, there was not so much information. There was maybe Anabolics 9th edition, 8th edition, and a couple forums. Were you on Muscle Mayhem or some of these forums? I never? Okay, maybe that's good.
No, so I was blessed to have 2 professional bodybuilders who, you know, I just sort of fucking planted myself beside them. I remember the one guy who's now one of my best friends, first time was like, hey man, do you want if I train with you? I was probably 19, 20. I wasn't small by any stretch. He just blew me off. He goes, nah, man, I don't train with anybody. You don't want to train with me. And it just blew me off. But I just like, hey, what time are you going to be here? I just want to be at the gym at the same time. And so I just kind of planted myself in the right place at the right time and, you know, sort of made myself, you know, in such a way that they couldn't say no. And I just started asking for advice. I was like, hey, you know, what would you do if you did this? And eventually they're like, God, this kid's annoying and he won't go away. So maybe I'll
I can imagine, really like I get surrounded by these kids all the time now. It's hilarious though. I try to plant the seed. Seed as best as I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was blessed. And the thing I liked about these guys were they were disciplined in the gym. They understood their stuff when it came to pharmacology, but they're also worried, or at least not worried, but aware of their health. You know, they ate well, they supplemented well, they did their blood work. And I was very blessed to have a couple of guys that, you know, probably by design, I surrounded myself with very young. And, you know, I did a lot of things wrong. Don't get me wrong. I did a lot of things really stupidly, a lot of trial and error, like sounds like you did. But I was also very blessed to have some guys in front of me who I was like, okay, yep, this is a good person who's not an idiot, who's not trying to hurt themselves, and they're trying to do it in the right way.
So what kind of mistakes did you undergo through trial and error? I'll start first. I went on the forums. That was my primary source of getting information because I was surrounded by IFBB pros, but then we're talking about Holland, so they're like third tier IFBB pros, guys that don't really win shows or definitely don't go to the Mr. Olympia. And when I moved out of Holland, that's when William Bonac started getting more popular. So, but when I was surrounded with William Bonac training at the exact same gym, he was just an amateur, right? And he didn't really know much about pharmacology. Plus, we didn't really ask because we're too intimidated by these guys. So you really never have a little circle of tight-knit people that are very transparent with you about, you know, what to do, what not to do, and kind of guide you through that process. So I had to find all my information online, whether those were the bodybuilding forums or PubMed and some of the, you know, publication websites. So you got these steroid forums and people talk about insane dosages. So on I think my third cycle, I ran up to 1,000 milligrams of tren. Stupid. Yeah, stupid. Yeah, exactly. No, it's, and I was tiny. I was like 92 kilos or something, you know?
Sure.
But that's what you thought, that's what you thought it took because all these pros were taking massive dosages. And if you're not surrounded by pros,
told, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you're told. So, and then going on a gram of tren will transform your physique. Not talking about diet, supplementation, blood work. So you go through that process. Recently, I reviewed all 800, 900 studies performed on Trenbolone, all of which on animals, by the way. Not a single human study available on Trenbolone. And I came to the anabolic to androgenic dissociation based on animal models, extrapolated that to a human equivalent dose. And then I ran 25 milligrams tren per week. And everybody thought I was crazy.
Wow.
But that was the dose that showed the most benefit for no side effects. So you go from 1,000 to 25, and I felt fantastic. Yeah,
I remember the first time I did Tren, I did 75 milligrams. Was it 50? It was probably 50 milligrams.
Was it the parabol lamps?
No. So it was, I don't know if you guys would have had this in Europe. It was, I forget the name of it, actually. I can see the bottle. It was like 30 cc bottles. I think it was 30 milligrams per cc. Anyways, I did 3 cc's a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I remember doing, I never had particularly strong triceps, so I was probably doing 95-pound skull crushers before. And then in about 4 weeks, I was doing 225-pound skull crushers. I went from 95 pounds to it was crazy, man. I was like, this is insane.
Was that contest prep or off season?
During a cut.
Okay.
But like,
that's even more insane because you're depleted.
Yeah, like this is what real steroids is. This is crazy. And you hear these guys using 1,000 milligrams. I'm like, your shit is garbage for sure, or whatever. I mean, maybe I was just a hyper responder, but it was nuts, man. I was like, this is, and I remember first time, same cycle, I went from squatting 600 to squatting 750 for reps. Like, and all I was doing, by the way, I wasn't even doing tests. It was just using the Tren. I was using 3 cc's a week. I think it was 30 milligrams. Might have been 50.
Was it your first cycle? What Tren first cycle? Okay.
No. My first cycle was test and like, I think equipoise. I remember doing 500 milligrams of test and like 400 milligrams of equipoise. And I put on, I don't know, like 30, 40 pounds or something. But the next cycle, all I could get was this Tren. I was in university. So I was like, yeah, I got one bottle of Tren. It was 30 cc's. I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'm gonna do it for 10 weeks, 3 cc's a week. And I just got stupid strong. And my diet was garbage, right? I remember I was dating a girl who was like a high up at Cadbury chocolate. And I would eat like 3 candy bars going into the gym. It was fucking stupid. But I was strong as shit.
I can imagine. Shit. How did you feel mentally though? Like only Tren, your HPTA shut down, your testosterone and estrogen is 0. Like how did you feel after 10 weeks?
Garbage. But I didn't know why, right? And so this is like the stupidity that kids do. Right? I had no idea. I felt garbage, but I didn't know why. Right. So I was like, oh, I guess I just need to eat more, sleep more, and like stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to do research back then either because, like, I think the publication websites were not available. Like when I went through all the Tren studies, so I went through all the papers on Trenbolone. Yeah, right. You don't really care. So what I did this research recently, and then you come after 900 studies, like, wait a minute, where's the human studies? And I tried to go through the citations in textbooks from 1978 to find some sort of human citation. Nothing. It's like everybody takes this shit. There's no human scientific evidence. This is insane. So I have a friend that has a connection at Merck. So I asked them, release the Trenbolone studies performed on human, and it's on pregnant women. And in the context of cancer, they can't release that because it's in the vault. But even those studies are completely unapplicable. So we're all using this magical compound at way too high dosages, and we don't know what it does in humans. And then there's one picture of the Necma parabolin insert, but the other side is not available, which is probably where the citations are. And there they recommend 50 milligrams, the net Trenbolone without the parabolin ester. They're recommended every 14 days and then every 3 weeks for a maximum duration of 6 weeks. So it's so funny that this romanticized compound that, everybody runs, but we have no idea what it does in humans. It's hilarious.
Well, I mean, we've got to have at least 30 years of like experiential data at this point, right? There's, it's been around certainly since the early 90s. So maybe 40 years of sort of, clinical application. So, I mean, if people start dying and dropping like flies, then maybe that's one of the results. But it seems like most of the guys, I mean, with the exception of obviously some great men in the sport, most guys are still kicking around at a relatively old age. Dorian's in his mid 60s.
Yep.
A lot of these guys are obviously, I don't think his dosages were quite what they are these days. I'd love to actually chat with you about that, man. Like, I think the audience needs to recognize how some of the dosages that are perpetuated online, probably perpetuated online in the forums when you were starting up, were simply not accurate. Like I'll tell you exactly what I did every cycle. It was always the same. It's bullshit. I talked to Kai Green. I'm like, Kai, what's the biggest cycle you ever did? I talked to Dorian. What's the biggest cycle you ever did? These guys are personal friends. It's not like they're going to lie to me. You're not some gym rat who they're going to make up some story to, which they probably wouldn't anyways. But I'm like, hey man, tell me what you were doing during this show. And he's like, oh, exactly this. So much so that I had one guy who didn't believe my cycles. He was actually living with me in California when I was there. I was like, hey dude, I had a shoebox. Like, take my shoebox. You can do my shots for me. Like, I won't do anything. You can do them all for me. You can see exactly what I'm doing. And he goes, I was getting ready for the Arnold Classic. He goes, you're fucking lying. I go, here's my stuff. You do my shots for me. And he's like, oh, what else are you doing? I'm like, dude, you're with me 24 hours a day. You can see what I'm doing. And people just think it's bullshit. But once you dial in the right protocol, the right nutrition, and your training, as you'll see, you need less. I think that's really the message I'd love to convey to people is create a training-based culture, create a discipline-based culture, and drugs are an augment. You're not going to become a professional bodybuilder without pharmaceuticals, but it shouldn't be just like, how much can I possibly take to get there faster? You guys are just going to die, man. And it's sad.
Yeah. What I see is that it's kind of the mentality of the forum bros and the amateurs that are almost there. Right? They're turning pro, but they don't necessarily have the genetics, so they can't possibly put on some size because everybody has their individual cap. I don't think I could be the size as an IFBB pro. I could be big, but really that IFBB pro size, I'm probably better off doing classic, but then my waist would be waist too wide, so I would never really place well. So I never really bothered because I knew my structure wasn't really suitable for that kind of high-level competition. So what I see a lot of guys, I've done blood work for many IFBB pros, whether that at the highest level or second or third tier, winning some shows in their area. And it's all pretty much the same. The cycles are not that complicated, certainly not as complicated as what I do or most people do, partially because they don't understand the synergy and the drug interactions to really optimize everything, unless they work with a specific coach. And what I see is that the dosages are maybe 2.5 grams at maximum. And that's not outside of the realm of what many amateurs run. Actually, many amateurs, they run 3, 4, 5 grams. And of course, there's some IFBB pros who are open about running 5 grams of gear. But I don't think that's many of them. Yeah, I don't think it's many of them. I think with some of the pros, what people don't understand, the synergy between insulin, growth hormone, and steroids. So if you understand that synergy and you know how to time all of that correctly, then you don't need much gear. So you might run 1.5 grams of gear, but then the IGF-1 and the growth hormone, the insulin is quite high. To really leverage the maximum amount of growth you can get. So they say, I'm on a gram a test and 500 deca. But I forget to mention that they're also on 12 IUs of growth hormone, which, kind of doubles the steroid dosages effectiveness-wise. So I'm running a gram. Yeah, that's what I've noticed. The more growth hormone you run, the more effect you get out of your anabolic steroids.
So how do you measure the effectiveness then, Steve? So here's the thing, growth hormone will definitely make you feel different, right? I feel volumized. I feel like my cells are always full. But how are we objectifying the effectiveness? Is it just how much muscle you put on, how much strength you put on, but how much are you actually keeping? There's a question for you.
Yeah, so of course, when you take the growth hormone out, you lose a lot of this volumizing effect. And especially if you do that around stepping on stage, you lose a significant amount. Now, what I noticed as of recent is that nobody takes their growth hormone out anymore because they're so lean. Yeah, so I would recommend that also to the guys competing in the amateur ranks. Take your growth hormone out, and then you lose a little bit of water. You don't need to use diuretics. But it seems that some guys nowadays that run their growth hormone all the way into the show, they keep their water high. Whatever diuretic protocol they run. But it doesn't really seem to affect them, even though you could say that the conditioning sometimes is lacking a little bit. So, of course, if you keep your growth hormone in, then you don't really lose the volume. Whereas if you do run or you take the growth hormone out 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the show, then you end up looking a little bit flat, but significantly drier and more detail, and then maybe better
I would lose
body
12
composition
to 15
overall.
pounds. I would stop growth hormone 10 days out, and I would lose 12 to 15 pounds every time. That's crazy, just to watch it. And I look better without the growth hormone. The growth hormone I always felt like I was watery. Big difference. Yeah.
And it was with or without the combination of dexedrine at the end? Or not Dexedrine.
Dexedrine?
What is it called? No, not Dexedrine.
Cytadren.
The Cytadren. Sorry,
Cytadren.
Cytadren.
So the only years I used Cytadren was competitive years, would have been 3 years, 11, 12, and 13. And then I didn't have any left and I stopped. The rest of it I'd given away and traded for other stuff. Yeah, so Cytadren was usually only the last 5 days. That was on Chad Nichols' advice, like same with Charles Glass, like 3 to 5 days before the show. So a small amount.
Yeah.
And that way I didn't have to use diuretics.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it has some aromatase inhibiting and diuretic-like effect. But from what I heard, it's a great compound, but it doesn't seem that it's available anywhere. Surprised that nobody started compounding it in China. Same as Esicline, for that matter. Yeah. So what I noticed is a lot of guys, instead of ramping up their steroid dosages, you ramp up the growth hormone and the insulin, and assuming that health parameters are okay, the growth just continues. But things like lipids and overall hematocrit and all these things are a little bit more manageable. Of course, the volume that they get from that it would go away when you discontinue the insulin and the growth hormone, and then you're left with less, but still significantly more. Not a significantly more amount of muscle that you would expect from that dose of steroids alone. And it's a little bit hard to quantify because everybody responds differently. So as I go through my protocols, I realize that less steroids is probably healthier and better, less ventricular hypertrophy, less long-term stress on your blood pressure and organs. And then the growth hormone, the insulin, and the IGF-1 seems to improve the muscularity without really detracting from the organs.
Yeah, man. The insulin is one that's like it's a tricky one, right? Because elevated insulin levels obviously is going to do a lot of damage to the arterial walls, and if I'm here for any reason, talking to these young bodybuilders, it's like you can do this in a healthy way and still be really big and still be really successful. You just need to know what you're paying attention to. So like high dose insulin. There's only one time I did high dose insulin for any amount of time is because I was working with Milos. And I would, looking back on it, that was probably, high dose. I don't know if it's the same as what you would call high dose, but 20 IUs.
40 to 80 per day.
Yeah. So I would use 20 IUs twice a day actually, no, he wanted me to use it like, I think during and then after, maybe before, during, I forget, but about 40 IUs, usually once a day. And I was like, man, looking back on it, I think that was a mistake to my health. Steroids, I don't really believe steroids are that negative to people's health unless you're obviously abusing it, driving up blood pressure, obviously throwing off hematocrit levels. But I see guys using steroids and living well into their 70s and 80s. And like, that's, I don't know, in my mind, I don't know that that's the biggest area of concern. I think it's the abuse of it that becomes a concern.
Yeah.
So, so if you're using 3 grams of test, then you probably have a problem with your hematocrit. You probably have a problem with your blood pressure. If you're doing excessive amounts of, things that are driving up hematocrit, yes. But for me, insulin, I don't know, man, just like what I know now around insulin's potential damage on the arterial walls, I'd love to hear your feedback on is it as bad as, in my mind, I've created it to be, or is it actually like, it's probably not doing that much as long as it's not crazy amounts?
Yeah, I think as long as it's not crazy amounts. So I would recommend like a long-acting insulin, like Lantus, for example, to have a basal insulin support. So you always have this little bit of glucose management in the background.
So of course, lower.
Yeah, it's lower, but also, it prevents these crazy high peaks and fluctuations. So we're talking about 10, 20 IUs of basal insulin, and then maybe 5 to 10 IUs pre-workout or post-workout, whatever you prefer, of a fast-acting insulin in the form of Humalog. And that will be it. So we're talking anywhere between 15 to 25 IUs for a period where insulin sensitivity is sustained. Now, of course, that really depends on your diet, how much cardio you're doing, if you're taking insulin-sensitizing micronutrients like magnesium, vitamin D3, all those little simple things. And then you kind of track the biofeedback. And I had guys that could run that protocol for 2 years straight without breaks. And I had other guys who could do it for 6 weeks. And then you see
what would be the factor that you have to stop? How would you know you're going to stop?
So you would see fasting blood glucose levels start to rise, even though they're on the basal insulin level. And then the triglycerides would start to rise, and you see the lipase and the amylase levels start to get a little bit off because there's a little bit of stress on the pancreas. Okay, you need to do a reset, mini diet, take the insulin out, maybe use berberine, metformin in extreme cases, reduce the carbs by half, do a little bit more cardio, and then start again. And of course, everybody's so different. So that's why bodybuilding is so weird, because you would like to set these guidelines, but it's almost impossible, because I know guys that run heavy cycles, 2.5 grams, high dose growth hormone, insulin left and right, and their blood work parameters don't change. Their heart is normal size. They don't have any fatty liver. There's no inflammation on the kidneys. So some guys seem to be a lot more resilient to higher dosages and abuse than other guys. And that's why it's so difficult sometimes to believe the IFBB pros saying that they run 1.5 grams a gear and 6 IUs of growth hormone, because the next guy, like me, for example, I would need to take twice that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It actually brings up a good question, Steve. I'm curious how much you're looking into the genetics, right? So I've been studying genetics pretty exhaustively at this point. And like, can we start to differentiate, when people say, quote unquote, that guy's got good genetics, that guy got bad genetics, there's an enormous number of SNPs that fall in, fall into, or genes that fall into that category. Like the things that people aren't thinking about, like insulin sensitivity, protein turnover, inflammation. There's mitochondrial effectiveness and biogenesis, and like so many genes that play into this this blanket term that gets thrown out of like, hey, this guy has good genetics, bad genetics. I think there's an opportunity to start looking at objectifying that and going, hey, based on your genes, you need to do this more, and based on your genes, you do that more. That's why I became very interested in FitnessGenes, and I'm working with them to sort of help bring more of their information to the fitness community.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's like the last roadblock for me. So I haven't looked into the genetics yet. Whether you want to have a firm grasp on the pharmacology and the drug interactions, but into the genetics, I haven't looked into it yet. So I haven't done my own DNA test, and I'm not really familiar with the SNPs, but I think at one point in time, I will kind of go in that direction. I still have like 25 deep dives left to do about particular compounds that are popular, just to make sure that everybody has all the information presented to them with the citations so they can make the best decisions. So it might be another year before I get into the genetics. So what have you found up until this point? Because it seems
Not
like
much,
a huge learning curve.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, I'll be doing it for the next 10 years, but I think there's an opportunity to do it for the next 10 years. I think it's not going to go away. It's not like it's a fad. I mean, being able to look at somebody's genes and say, hey, the blessing of what I have right now is I'm exposed to these Oxford geneticists, and I can talk to them about, hey, this client is experiencing this thing. For example, I don't know, maybe someone's having a hard time losing fat. They're in deficit, they're training, they're not losing fat. So we can look at their genetics and find out specific patterns that are appearing to be like, oh, they need to do this. And I would never be able to look at their genes and determine what possible, interaction of the genes is causing some type of resistance, or maybe they're taking, for example, BCAAs, and that's causing some type of downstream negative effect that's preventing their body from releasing fat, as an example, So I think this is sort of the new frontier, right? We can look at drug interactions, we can look at blood lipids, we can look at blood work, and give us a pretty good idea. But there's still these obscure cases where you're like, nothing's happening, nothing's working for this person, or like, how can we do it in a way that doesn't require them to do things that are dangerous? I think it's a really interesting next frontier for optimization and performance.
Yeah, what I found problematic now is that the SNPs, a lot of them are not really mapped. And there's so many of them that you would almost need some sort of AI to kind of interpret what does what and how they interact.
It's being done, right? They're calling it a digital twin, Steve. So you'll upload your DNA into this system, and it basically has like Steve as an AI, or Steve as a digital version of you. And then you could say, based on your genes, based on your blood work, based on all your historical blood work, they're kind of creating this digital physiology. And so we can say, hey, enter and put in this vitamin or this molecule or this pharmaceutical, and we can actually look and see what happens within your genetics based on your digital twin. And that seems to be the future of sort of personalized medicine and pharmacology.
Yeah, especially if you can combine that with drug interactions and pharmacology that people like to take, which is hard because there's so many experimental compounds out there that people take that have very little scientific evidence behind them, especially in humans. So that makes it a little bit difficult. But if that could be developed over the next 10 years, it would take a lot of guesswork out of it. Because I always feel that in bodybuilding, guessing.
Yeah, they're further ahead than we think. So I had a guy on the podcast a couple months ago who was telling us that it's like they're pretty far ahead with this digital twin thing, which is super exciting because it may actually, it's interesting because it may actually change research, right? So if you think of sort of scientific research, and if you have these digital twins, you no longer need the cohort. You just need the data. You just need the technology, right? You don't need an actual live person. You can just do it directly on the computer. That certainly changes the potential trajectory of scientific research, right? I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so you could just simulate a scenario and then use your digital twin to kind of, okay, what would happen if I go eat donuts for 10 days? So arbitrary.
Yep.
Okay, do I get, insulin resistance? But at least it would motivate you not to book that, 10-day excursion on a cruise and then you eat at the hotel buffet like an asshole because you know exactly what's going to happen because you simulated.
Sounds like you're talking from experience here, buddy.
I've been there, yeah. This is how it got big. A lot of good food in Vegas, that's for sure. Now, that sounds very interesting, so I'll definitely have a look in that. But it's the genetics. Every time I wanted to get started, I looked at it and I'm like, man, this is such a big learning curve. It would, it would take me years to, really go through it. And since I have so much left to do in the pharmacology aspect regarding harm and risk mitigation, I think it's better if I kind of complete my task there, which I'm about 50% done with the deep dives that I wanted to make. Yeah.
Tell me what molecules, Steve, that are like surprising or interesting to you. Obviously, Tren was a surprising one, but like, what have you come across that's been exciting, interesting, surprising? Like, what should I be taking as one of your friends, fans, and followers? Like, what should I be like? If your goal is to look great, to live long, and to perform well, what should I be taking?
I like nicotinamide mononucleotide, the building block for NAD, but the scientific evidence is quite thin, and there's a lot of, especially Sinclair is kind of manipulating the data to pull another resveratrol. Yeah, pull another resveratrol, but I can notice a clear difference, and this is, of course, anecdotal, on top of all the right things that I'm doing, right? My diet is flawless as long as I'm back home and have a kitchen available. If I go on holiday, I'm on holiday mode, and I eat a little bit more freely. But as long as I live the lifestyle, the training and the fasted cardio and health supplementation, I can notice a clear difference between taking 1,000 milligrams nicotinamide mononucleotide to taking 0. And it helps with energy levels, cognition, my sleep quality is improved. I'm just a lot more productive, especially when I combined it with a ketogenic diet, which is not very favorable for bodybuilding, but who cares at this point? Being 250 is more than big enough. So if I can forego the carbs.
You're on keto diet?
Yeah, I've been on keto most of my life. I think since I was 19 years old.
Oh.
And then occasionally I would break my keto diet if I really wanted to bulk up because I felt that was just easier to grow on 800 to 1,000 grams of carbs.
Why have you chosen to do keto? Is that brain benefits, or what's the reason behind that?
So it's mostly ketosis, and it helps with appetite suppression for me. So I feel instead of having these blood glucose fluctuations where you feel like excitatory and then you have a dip and then you have to eat again. And of course, as a bodybuilder, you eat 4, 5, 6 meals a day, especially back in the day when I was hardcore into it. You eat 6 meals per day. So you have like 150 grams of carbs 6 times per day. And then you would just be productive for an hour and then kind of doze off and need to take a nap. Yeah, sleeping. And then, you wake up again, cup of coffee, another meal, 150 grams of carbs from rice and maybe some dextrose and, the meathead lifestyle. And now I got too much responsibility. So I just need everything stable. So I take, eggs, 2 whole eggs, or 8 egg whites, 2 whole eggs, some avocado, vegetables, get my day started. And then I have similar meals, meat and a vegetable source and a fat source. And I just have that 4 or 5 times per day. I don't really take shakes anymore. It's just all real foods, high micronutrient rich foods. Most of my food is imported because I like the highest quality that I can get. Local food here in Thailand, it's a little bit dubious. I just found that nutrition-wise works a lot better for me. And the real addition on top of my cognition is then the nicotinamide mononucleotide. But that's alongside SLU and methylene blue and MOTC for mitochondrial health. So you got this mitochondrial pathway upregulated and all these enzymatic reactions that are dependent on NAD+ or NADP, NADPH, magnesium, right? I get a constant influx of these nutrients. So I feel that my body is constantly working and it allows me for 12-hour to 16-hour working days, which I used to do in the past as a business consultant. But then I would need to take naps, and I would just have these brain fog moments where I'm like, can't really. Now, for example, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I woke up at 12. Like, I have a weird schedule. I live according to the Western world. So I wake up at 12 in the afternoon. I get started right away. I go to the gym at one point, and then I continue to work until 3 a.m. And I'm focused all the way through. Yeah,
no,
when I have kids, though, no, not anymore. No, I used to take like 50 milligrams modafinil. Once in a while, I take 10 milligrams Noopept or 10 milligrams Dihexa or 25 milligrams Bromantane. So those are reasonably low dosages, kind of dependent on the work that I need to do. But most of the time, I'm just highly cognitive. And it's a stark contrast.
I've never used it before.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, I like it. I haven't really done much research on it. I recently got a bottle of one of my affiliates. So I started taking it occasionally, but I can't really tell you much about it yet because I haven't done much research.
How would you differentiate that from Noopept or Dihexa?
So Noopept, it's a little bit subtle, right? Because Noopept, I feel, helps a little bit more with the absorption of information and then recollection, whereas Dihexa is a little bit more stimulatory, a little bit more allows you to work routine stuff with also good recollection, but I feel that it's not so good for absorption. And Bromantane is a little bit of everything, where you can do a lot of research, recollect it, and then recite papers that I read maybe 10 papers ago, where I can kind of put it all together. So that I feel that the interconnection, it's a little bit hard to explain. But when you're preparing to do so much, when you're preparing to do a literature review, and you literally have to go through hundreds of studies, write citations, and then keep the citations going, and then take little snippets of what I want to present. Like I'm doing a methylene blue deep dive right now. That's 230,000 studies. And that's hard to,
Crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot. So
how about
ketogenic diets, NMN, and then you never use that.
Never used that. Somebody asked me about that today. Apparently it's like SLUPP, but I've never heard of it.
I believe that it's another dopaminergic system activation, but I haven't really looked into it. Yeah, I haven't really looked into it. And there's so many in the nootropic space. The one that made the biggest difference for me was Cerebrolysin. That's like the
injectable or inhaler? Or
the injectable. Yeah, injectable. I just did 2 months of 5 milliliters per day. So I'll do a deep dive on Cerebrolysin versus Cortexin. It's another brain-derived neurotropic factor increaser. And then see how that compares. It makes a big difference. Also helps with the. So normally, like I still like to train hard. It's a lot less than before. It's a little bit more controlled. No crazy, full stacks and everything anymore. But it's still quite intense. So I noticed that Cerebrolysin, if I take it before bed, it prevents the post-exercise brain fog the next day. So you feel refreshed, and it really helps with sleep quality. At least for me, some people feel stimulated by the brain-derived neurotropic factor, whether that's coming from Dihexa or Semax, Selang, Cerebrolysin. So they stay awake. But I noticed that it really enhances my sleep quality. Now, I take a nighttime growth hormone administration, so I'm sure that helps also. So that combination of Cerebrolysin and growth hormone allows me to have high-quality sleep, 6 to 8 hours, nice deep sleep, wake up feeling super refreshed. And then the next day, I'm highly productive. But it also makes you, let's say, a little bit more leveled. So instead of having these fluctuations in your mood, like, are you into cryptocurrency or trading or managing assets that are highly?
And right before we got on this call, I was managing my account. And I was like,
I got my Binance open right here. So we're at 92,400 now. It's great. So before
we exchange some theories because maybe not on the podcast, but we'll exchange.
Not on the podcast because people like to copy trades. But so the market is quite volatile, right? Especially altcoins. And I noticed that with like Noopept or Dihexa or Bromantane, you're like, want to buy, want to sell, based on trading indicators. But with Cerebrolysin, you take that whole guessing game away, and you're so calculated that the last 2 months I made killer trades. And when I say killer trades, it's life-changing money. And we're not even, really in the bull market yet. This is just the beginning. So even though Cerebrolysin is very expensive.
Taking advice from someone? Like, are you studying it the way you study pharmacological or pathways, or are you studying? Yeah.
Yes, books, and
I've been
I'm
doing the
part of
same.
the training culture. Yeah, because like there's, let's say, 3 ways to get rich, right? First, you save money. That's a little bit of a defeated purpose because now you have to spend so much time saving money that you don't have time to actually earn money. So that saving money is a little bit redundant. You delegate, and then you focus on the things that actually make money. Right? So I have staff. Before, I never thought about that. And then whatever money you earn that you don't spend, you have to make work for you. And for that, we have assets, whether that's real estate, cars, license plates, Pokemon cards, cryptocurrency, stocks, assets. So you got to put that money to work. And while the market is going up, you got to manage that. So I come to a realization the last 5 years. I've been in cryptocurrency for almost 10 years. The last 5 years, that if I take some of this energy away from bodybuilding and just focus a little bit more on asset management, then I can actually, by the time I have kids, which is, well, stay tuned, then I don't have to work.
Exactly.
I don't have to stress. So that was always my goal, become financially secure to the point you don't have to work, and then I can just do it all over again because, like your childhood, you probably had to do a little bit of a do-over by the time you get your own kids. So I'm now at the point where I can just walk away if I want to. And if my audience knows this, that I'm going to walk away when I have kids. And that's coming up shortly. So
good for you, bro. Good to hear, man.
Thank you.
Let's definitely wrap on crypto. I think I'm more obsessed with crypto over the last probably 5 years I've been invested. So. Yeah.
No, I like crypto because it's very volatile and it's fast. It's quick paced. Like the stock exchange is a little bit slow. Like I remember doing the research on liraglutide and dulaglutide and semaglutide. It's like, this is going to change the world. So I bought it early. I did the research during the pandemic on all the vaccines. Like, this is going to end up terrible, but everybody needs to have these vaccines government mandated, right? So I bought in and then sold when all the terrible side effects became apparent. So I made good money on Pfizer and Moderna, and then before it tanked. But you see now that Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly is still ramping up. And I got some Bayer stock just to feel good because it's pharmaceutical and everybody loves their Testifirin and Primobolan. So those are my feel-good stock. Even though it's going down, I still own some of them. But yeah, that's asset management is kind of like the next thing, right? In the beginning, you need to become financially secure, and then you need to put the money to work. And that allows you to kind of retire at one point from doing the monotonous stuff.
That's what we're doing, man. We're both in the same boat.
Like, did you do bodybuilding coaching at one point or another during your career, or no?
Yeah. So during my career, I did a little bit. After my career, I trained a couple guys in high-level IFBB pros. But I've shifted now to coaching high-level execs and entrepreneurs and athletes. So actually, when I retired, I had a couple of professional athletes come to me who had just recently retired and said, "Hey, could you treat me the way I was kind of getting treated in my pro sports? So doing the lab work, doing all the testing, just making sure their health was optimized." So that's really sort of grown into, now I get a lot of sort of venture capital guys. I get a lot of executives that come to me, and we work on their blood work. We optimize their training. We optimize their brain. So a lot of stuff you're teaching, all these protocols, I'll sort of extract those, and in a healthy, you're doing the same thing. We're doing similar things as far as using protocols and molecules to just look for that slight edge.
Yeah. And those are the best clients to have because, they follow you, they trust in your capabilities, but they don't need hand-holding because they understand insights. Yeah. They don't need the hand-holding like the bodybuilders. Like I coach bodybuilders for 50 years and I love bodybuilders. I love bodybuilding, but they're nuts. I know that I'm nuts and most of my clients were nuts. That's why I decided when I started my YouTube channel, you know what? If I don't want to coach anymore, all this knowledge that I accumulated, it's a little bit of a waste. So I just put it all out there for free. And then I think Stein Efferding, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, he's like, just put it out for free. It will come back. And he was right. So everything I know, it's on my YouTube channel. And a lot of people learn from that. And I think it's making a big difference. But that was just one of the reasons to have like a giant brain dump in the form of a YouTube channel. So I didn't have to coach people anymore because now I could reach everybody and then focus on the high-level entrepreneurs and actually learn more about trading, because it's can be quite volatile and stressful. And then, of course, if you use some nootropics like Cerebrolysin, it kind of levels you. So you make much better trades. And because you have like your 10 commandments of trading in the back of your head, like 1, 7, 5, 10 are matched, but the other ones are not. So I'm not going to sell. And then it goes up. Okay. Good. Instead of like, oh, it's going up and it's coming down a little bit and now I got to sell. That's like the panic, the defeatist, decision.
Yeah. You talk about your sources for Cerebrolysin and Dihexa. Do you have these on your website, or what are your primary online portals?
Yeah. So on my website, I have a huge source list. It's all indexed, so it's easy to find. So it's basically like, everything all the affiliates that I work with, all the products that I endorse, they're all listed. And other products that I don't really endorse because the affiliates might have compounds that I don't like, then I don't put them in my source list. Okay. So it's kind of like easy access.
VigorousSteve.com?
Yeah, VigorousSteve.com. And then I think the top article is like Control F source list. So there's a gigantic index of maybe 1,000. It's very sloppy. I'm redoing my website.
I'm the same, man. I'm always like ashamed of my website. I'm like, whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, people go there and it fulfills its purpose. And the funny thing is, I just made a WADA-Approved a WADA-Approved doping stack for 2025. So I mix and match all the compounds that are, that's what I do every year and I love it. So all the compounds that are not in the WADA prohibited list, I made a video about, and this year they added in Mod C, which I know works, and I love that compound, and I recommended that to a lot of athletes over the last couple of years. So I got a little bit pissed. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to list everything that works. So I made a video that's 1 hour and 40 minutes long that my editor is working on now. I just go over everything that's not included. As a little bit of a FU to WADA. I said, okay, you take one compound away, I'll give you 200 more options. And it's just
I'll watch it.
It's just mental masturbation, but it's
sure.
Because you'll still fail because most of these compounds are not FDA approved anywhere. So under that clause, you can technically you're not allowed to use it because it's not prescribable. But yeah, it's just that's what I like to do on my YouTube channel. Hey, before we wrap it off, I still want to ask you, like, what was the craziest cycle you've done yourself? Because a lot of IFBB pros say that they did small cycles and high cycles. Like, just give it. Or your last cycle that you did for the Vancouver Pro.
My first Olympia would have been obviously my biggest cycle because I in your brain, you're like, I got to make sure I'm dialed in. So it's hard for me to sort of say what the cycle was because it changes every couple of weeks, So I started with 1,500 milligrams of testosterone, which is the highest I'd ever done. I think I started with 400 milligrams of DECA. This is probably 16 weeks out. Yeah. And so I just kind of, obviously ramped up and probably started 1,500 milligrams of test, 400 milligrams of DECA, probably did some like Androl or something like that. And then every 2 weeks I would make changes. So I either add something in or take something out or make a change. So, 14 weeks out, I probably would have brought I have it all written down, but I would have brought the test down a little bit and probably put in. So the challenge I had was it wasn't always possible to get the same molecule. I probably would have put in equipoise. So I probably put in a little equipoise for 6 weeks. 12 weeks out, I would have added in Tren. 10 weeks out, I would have added in Masteron. 8 weeks out, I would have added in Winstrol. 6 weeks out, Anavar. 3 weeks out, Halo. And it's just like this additive thing. And then
6 weeks.
Adjust of what?
6 weeks out, the Halotestin.
No, three.
Oh, 3, okay.
6 weeks out, I added in Anavar.
Right,
6 weeks out, I added in Anavar. And so dosage, I got up to 100 milligrams of Anavar.
Okay, wow.
Halo, I would start at 30 milligrams, 40 milligrams. And maybe for the last week, I would do 50. Winstrol, I didn't do so much, probably 100 milligrams a day. Maybe 50 milligrams a day.
Oral Winstrol, right?
No injectable.
Oral Winstrol. Oh, injectable, 50 milligrams. That's potent. So which compounds would you take out then? I'm assuming that the DECA would come out at one point in time and the EQ would come out.
So DECA would come out by 10 weeks out. I'd down for about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, changed out. EQ would be out by 8 or 7 weeks out. And then I put the master on. I said master on, it goes in at 7 weeks out. So like I try to keep my dosages relatively the same. I didn't so the total dose, right? So total dose would be about 2,000 milligrams, and I would adjust things based on one, what I had access to, and two, as I change the molecules and stuff. Obviously, another thing is equated milligram per milligram.
Right.
But generally, it never would go over 2,000 milligrams. So I started at 2,000, and then as I would take out the deck, I'd put in the EQ. And again, it wasn't always. I have it written down, and I'm happy to share it if you want to put it in the show notes. I have all my Olympia, all my gym sort of notes from every year, all my contest notes, all the stats. But it's always about the same thing. Started at 16 weeks out. That year, my test would have been higher. Normally, my test was 1050. I started at 750 test, like 250 Sustanon or whatever every other day. But I put 250 Sustanon with 100 milligrams of Prop every other day.
Right.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So 1050. And I think that was very high. Like that was, getting ready for a professional show. And so again, I'm happy to share all this stuff with you. It's been probably 8 years since I reviewed this shit. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. And nowadays you probably run a little bit of TRT just to keep you going, or did you come off completely?
So I came off completely for almost 2 years, and my testosterone was 27. So I got back on about 150 a week. I'm doing 150 a week, Monday, Wednesday, so 150 milligrams 3 times a week.
Yeah. So that's a good dose to kind of maintain within the reference range. I was on HCG monotherapy for about a year to become fertile and get my wife pregnant. And surprisingly, on HCG monotherapy, 1,000 IUs 3 times per week, my testosterone was like 900 nanograms per deciliter. But you know what's weird? I didn't look the same and I didn't feel the same as TRT. No. So I took the HCG out, and then I went to 150 milligrams per week, 50 milligrams 3 times per week, like you said. And that was such a huge difference. So I think even with the HCG monotherapy, like natural pulses, it probably comes down later in the day, because I would always check it after an administration to kind of see if my beta HCG levels would still be high enough, so I wouldn't miss out on my fertility protocol. Even with natural 900 versus TRT 900, it's a big difference. Yeah, now I'm about 1,100 milligrams.
So with HCG, your luteinizing hormone will obviously go back, but was your FSH staying down, or was that coming up too?
No, I had to supplement with that also. So I did HCG monotherapy and then FSH alongside of it. But of course, FSH doesn't really produce hormones. It just helps with spermatogenesis. So over the course of a year, I was able to come from, I never was infertile on cycle. So I was having 22 million sperm per milliliter, and then 2 or 3 milliliters, depending on how many days of absence there was. So it's a good sample, but it's not the best sample. So after a year, I brought it up to like 500 per ejaculate, 500 million per ejaculate, with beautiful morphology, motility, all that stuff. But we still ended up doing IVF because my wife is also 40. So after a year of trying natural, we ended up going the IVF route because it just wasn't happening. So now we're luckily in the process of getting ready for some good news. First trimester stuff.
Congratulations,
buddy. Yeah,
I think the good thing about IVF is you kind of get to select the best embryo, right? The most viable.
Yeah, so
that's great.
Yeah, so we ended up with 4 embryos that were viable, and then we ran them through genetic testing, and then we had 3 left, and then and of course we'll still do a NIP test just to make sure that everything went well. But then you can kind of handpick which one you implant, and that's very exciting. At the
same time, get that shit done, knock them all out.
Well, so in Thailand, if you put 3 at the same time, there's strict laws against abortion. So if you put 3 and they all stick, then you have 3 kids at the same time. So we did that's one by one.
Triplets, man, knock it out.
Man, it's like three times school tuition for private school in one round. It's kind of hurt. Yeah, crypto
honestly,
better go up to
1 is just 3 is just the same as 1, man. Like I had 2 kids within 18 months. Like you can get, once you got 1, it's occupying all of your life anyways. So you might as well have 5. That's my belief.
Yeah, I'll see. Well, after the first one is born, we'll probably when my wife's ready, we'll do the second one because we're kind of old. We're 40 something. probably be 43 by the time the second one's born. And then I can close that chapter. 2 kids will be enough.
Love it, brother. Yeah, man. Kids are the best. My kids are 11 and 12 now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just the best things in my life, man. The greatest humans I know.
I can't wait. Hey, this was great. We'll do a podcast on your YouTube channel, but that will drop in January, I believe.
January. Yep. You got it, brother. I look forward to it, man. I get so many questions I want to ask you. I want to dig into that amazing brain.
Yeah, sure, for sure. So I'll link Ben's YouTube channel down below in case you want to see that podcast, even though it will take, let's say, 2 months before that drops. Just make sure you subscribe now, because Ben has a lot of new content dropping soon. And where else can people find you? Anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, the Muscle Intelligence podcast. I took a little break this year, and I'm coming back with a vengeance in January. That's a good place to find me. Otherwise, Instagram, generally people will find me there. I've got a newsletter as well that people can log into to get sort of the most up-to-date updates from me.
Cool. Awesome. Again, guys, it's all linked down below. Ben, this was great. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I'll talk to you again very soon, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions. I'm sure we can fill another 2 hours easily.
Easily, man. Likewise, Steve. Enjoyed it, man. Thank you.